Democrats are the reason that the Department of Homeland Security is currently shut down. They have chosen to act against the American people for political reasons. And now we have FEMA workers, the men and women of the United States Coast Guard, men and women of TSA who keep our airports moving, who will be working without paychecks for no good reason other than the Democrats wanting to pick a fight with Donald Trump. And the president thinks that is irresponsible and despicable. He wants the government to be open. We've been engaged in good faith negotiations with the Democrats. Last night they sent over a counter proposal that frankly was very unserious, and we hope they get serious very soon because Americans are going to be impacted by this.
That's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt blasting the Democrats' counteroffer to end the partial government shutdown, the shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security, now entering day 6. Funding lapsed on Saturday night, leaving much of the department working without pay. But ICE operations, one of the Democrats' biggest sticking points, remains largely unaffected, given the money allocated toward ICE in the big, beautiful bill. Joining me now is Kentucky Congressman Andy Barr, member of the House Financial Services and Foreign Affairs Committees. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning.
And I know both congressional chambers are on recess, back on Monday. What do you see as next steps here? What is the catalyst to reopen Homeland Security?
Well, the Democrats once again are showing a willingness to engage in a temper tantrum as opposed to governing, and that's why we should never allow them control of Congress again. But look, the bottom line is Democrats would rather shut down the Department of Homeland Security than shut down the border. The path forward is clear. Open up the government. Let's pay our TSA workers. Let's pay our FEMA workers, our Coast Guard. Leavitt is right. ICE is continuing to get funding because of our reconciliation bill. Border Patrol continues to be funded. If there are reforms that need to happen, this president, Republicans are willing to look at that. But the important functions of Homeland Security must continue. That means continuing border security, continuing to shut down the border, continuing to crack down on illegal immigrant fraud in places like Minneapolis, and keeping the American people safe. That's what the American people elected Donald Trump to do, and he is doing it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader John Thune is pledging to bring the SAVE Act to a vote when back in session next week, though scheduling depends on whether the partial government shutdown comes to an end. Again, you've got real pushback from your colleagues on the left. The SAVE Act has backing from 50 Senate Republicans now, enough to clear at least one procedural hurdle, but not enough to overcome the filibuster. I spoke with Florida Democrat Jared Moskowitz yesterday. He voted against legislation in the House, and I want to get your take on what he said about this. Listen to this. Are you going to vote yes for ID to vote?
I'm for photo ID. We have photo ID here in Florida. And so I have no problem with photo ID. What's being proposed is a separate, completely different identification just for voting.
Now, wait a minute, because the SAVE Act, the Save America Act, is requiring voters to show ID to vote. And they also require a citizenship so that you stay with the law and, in fact, only have American citizens voting. So, again, will you vote yes to that act?
Yes, so again, there's no evidence that non-citizens are voting.
American citizens vote in American elections. So having an ID to vote would be in step with the law. So are you going to vote for the law?
If they put forward a bill that says you can use your driver's license or your state-issued identification to vote, I support that. The SAVE Act goes way beyond that. It would affect women whose birth certificate doesn't match their driver's license. It will depress turnout by requiring people to go and re-register to go get this new voter ID.
Congressman. That's not true.
This is about depressing turnout. It's not about making sure non-citizens vote.
Let them use their driver's license either, Congressman. The SAVE Act is a requirement for ID to vote, period. So, Congressman, I want to get your take on that. Is the SAVE Act beyond showing proof that you're an American citizen? Can it be adjusted to get Democrat support? What's your take?
Well, Maria, you did a great job exposing the Democrats' situation here and my colleagues' unwillingness to commit to something that the vast majority of Americans think is basic common sense, which is Photo ID. Show a photo ID when you vote. You have to show a photo ID if you want to buy a beer, if you want to board an airplane in this country, sometimes to buy medicine at the pharmacy. Why wouldn't we require basic photo ID when you vote to secure the integrity of our democracy? The Save America Act is a simple bill. It requires in federal elections states to require prospective voters to show documentary proof that they are a U.S. citizen. The vast majority of Americans understand that that is a simple requirement. This is not about voter suppression. That's nonsense. The Save America Act is about making it easy to vote for American citizens, but hard to cheat. And the Democrats, by opposing this basic, simple bill, are really showing what they are protecting, which is an unsecure election situation.
Yeah, I mean, so do you want to see a talking filibuster where you're talking about this on the floor and you want to show exactly where everybody stands? Is that what's coming in the Senate?
Well, no one is more frustrated with the filibuster than House Republicans, who continue to pass good pieces of legislation like the Save America Act, like good pieces of legislation that die in the Senate because of the filibuster. I will tell you, some of my Senate colleagues who are the biggest defenders and supporters of this president do point out that if we did away with the filibuster, what that would mean in terms of court packing or actually laws that would ban states' voter ID laws or making D.C. a state. That is the concern for many conservative Republicans who support this president in the Senate if the Democrats were to take the Senate again.
Of course. Ashley Davis, how do you see this? Jump in here.
Yeah. Hi, Congressman. Nice to see you. I mean, this is a tough issue with the filibuster. First of all, I think most Republicans, if not every single one, will vote for the SAVE Act in the Senate, from what I understand. But we definitely have to hold the Democrats responsible by being on record voting against it. But going back to the filibuster quickly, I mean, I just think just being in Washington as long as you have, or maybe even longer, I think that we can't get rid of it because of all the reasons that the conservatives are saying. I think the institution of the Senate needs to probably stand. And I know you may be there next year, hopefully. So how do you feel about that?
Well, look, the Save America Act is vitally important, and I support it, and that's why I voted for it. But it's also, that's exactly the reason why we can't allow Democrats to push through what they would want to do to federalize elections, to ban states requiring photo ID or states prohibiting activities like allowing non-citizens to vote. Every time a non-citizen vote or someone who is not a U.S. citizen votes, obviously that cancels out the legitimate votes of an American. And it seems like Democrats want that to happen. We can't allow that to happen.
Congressman, let me get your take on the State of the Union Tuesday night. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt updating the press on the ongoing negotiations between the U.S. and Iran. I suspect this is going to be one of the talking points for the president. He's kept his boot on the neck of the Iranians. The Journal is reporting that the U.S. is assembling the most air power in the Middle East since the 2003 Iraq invasion, coming as Iran is warning of rocket launches across southern regions today, along with joint naval exercises in Russia. Satellite images revealed Tehran has recently built a concrete shield over a new facility at a sensitive military site. Then they covered it up with soil, Congressman. Nuclear talks resuming within the next 2 weeks after round 2 today in Geneva. Are we going to war with Iran? What's your take?
Well, as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, we're monitoring these developments very, very closely. As Secretary Rubio said earlier this week, no one has been able to successfully negotiate a deal with the authoritarian cleric regime in Tehran, but they're going to try. And if there's anyone who can negotiate a diplomatic peace and a denuclearization of Iran, it's this deal-maker-in-chief. It's this commander-in-chief. But Maria, think of why it is that the president has been able to put and make some progress with Steve Witkoff, with the Iranian foreign minister in Geneva. The reason is because he has demonstrated, he has given himself leverage by demonstrating a willingness and resolve to use kinetic and military force effectively with Operation Midnight Hammer, by taking out Maduro in Venezuela, by moving 2 carrier strike groups into the region and 50 additional fighter jets. This president is demonstrating peace through strength.
Right.
And he has demonstrated a resolve that if this regime doesn't meet his criteria, which is to end the slaughter of innocent Iranian civilian protesters,
absolutely,
to end financing these terror proxies, and stop its nuclear program, there will be no deal.
Yeah, then perhaps he will move, and we'll hear about it Tuesday night as well in the State of the Union. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks so much, Andy Barr.
Good to see you, too.
All right, we'll see you soon. We'll be right back. Stay with us.